Welcome back to BNG Hockey, where it's always black and gold. The wait is finally over. The Bruins have a second-round opponent in the New York Islanders, and we know that the series will start on Saturday. So just like I did with the Washington Capitals, I'm going to preview the series and give you my predictions. Let's talk about it. A big factor in almost any series is always goaltending, and we talked about it quite a bit in the series against the Washington Capitals. Now, they had some injury problems, so that didn't really help their case, but they never truly had a number one starter, and the Bruins will see something very different against the New York Islanders. I would argue not only do they have a true number one starter, but they have two. And right now, the hottest of the two is Ilya Sorokin. He won all 4 of the games that he played in the series against the Pittsburgh Penguins, so he's currently 4-0 in this year's playoffs, with a 1.95 goals against average and a .943 save percentage. Those are really impressive numbers from the rookie goaltender. And if the rookie cools off, they can always go back to Semyon Varlamov, who has had plenty of experience as a starter in the past, and a fair amount of success against the Boston Bruins. So right off the bat, we can tell that likely the Islanders are going to get a lot more help from their goaltending than the Washington Capitals got from their goalies in the series against the Bruins. But the Islanders are not the only team in this series with good goaltending. I mentioned in my recap video of the Bruins vs. Capitals series that Tuukka Rask played really well in the series, and even though he wasn't the only reason the Bruins moved on to the next round, he certainly did his job and was a factor. And since I gave you the numbers for Ilya Sorokin, let's check in on the numbers for Tuukka Rask this playoffs. He's currently 4-1 with a 1.81 goals against average and a .941 save percentage. Those are really good numbers from Tuukka Rask, and even though he's getting some help from his defense, and I feel like the Bruins overall are playing pretty well defensively, he's certainly locked in right now. And when Tuukka Rask is locked in and playing at that elite level that we all know he can, the Bruins become a lot more dangerous and a lot harder to beat. So there's going to be some good goaltenders in this series. It will be interesting to see if any injuries happen. It seems like both teams have pretty solid secondary options. As I mentioned before, I would be comfortable throwing Swayman in there. I know he doesn't have much experience, but he seems like he's a legit guy. And as I mentioned as well, the Islanders can flip-flop between Varlamov and Sorokin. So goaltending right off the bat seems like it will be one of the biggest factors in this series. So now that we know that goaltending is going to be a factor in this series, you automatically start to think about the forwards whose job it is to beat those goaltenders. And I'm going to be honest here, I think the Bruins forwards blow the Islanders forwards out of the water. Now I'll start off by saying I realize the Islanders do have some talent up front. They have Matt Barzal, who's a star. I want him to be a Bruin. I talk about that draft all the time. They have other guys like Beauvillier and Eberle, Palmieri, Nelson, Bailey. I know the whole list, so I don't need that in the comment section. Obviously, the Islanders are a good enough team. You don't make it this far if you don't have a good team. And I do respect the Islanders forwards, but on paper and watching the way they're playing right now, you have to give credit to the Bruins forwards, and you kind of got to tip your hat to the Bruins on this one. The Islanders don't have anyone close to a Patrice Bergeron, a Brad Marchand, a David Pastrnak, even a David Krejci or Taylor Hall when they're playing at an elite level. They just don't. Now, could the Islanders get the same amount of production from their top 6 as the Bruins get from their top 6? Certainly. In the playoffs, it's not like the regular season where the perfection line can just run around and get 5 points a night and have it be easy. And we're going to get to it a little later, but the Islanders system will prevent them from doing that as well. I'm just saying that right now, looking at it on paper, not even because I'm a Bruins fan, I think the overall depth of the Bruins forwards is a lot better than that of the Islanders. Now, I will mention that the Islanders do have more middle-of-the-road kind of guys all throughout their lineup. You could argue that a guy like Pageau would maybe be a number 2 center on another team, and he's playing number 3 center. And every night they can have a line get hot, and they're really comfortable rolling anybody out there at any time. Barry Trotz just kind of goes with whatever line's producing is his top line that night. And the Bruins kind of do the same thing now that they have 2 good solid lines, but you're not going to see the Charlie Coyle, Jake DeBrusk line playing more than the Bergeron line on nights. So that will certainly be interesting. Maybe you could argue that the Islanders have a little bit more depth, but I just think the overall talent of the Bruins forwards is just so much better than that of the Islanders, and if they play to their ceiling, they should dominate that matchup. We talked about the goaltending, we talked about the forwards, so we might as well talk about the defense. The Bruins D-Corps took a big step forward in that series against the Capitals. they really impressed me with the way they played defensively. They were still solid in front of their own net, playing physical, blocking shots, but playing to their identity, which is a bit more of a speed game with a great first pass, not being afraid to join the rush and make plays, or creating offense from the back end by shooting the puck themselves. And we even got a little banged up with guys like Lozon out, Miller out, and then you saw guys like Clifton come into the lineup who had a really big impact on the series, and a guy like Jared Tenorti who didn't seem out of place. Now that you have Lozon on the mend and hopefully Miller not too far behind, you realize that the Bruins defense is really getting better. They're super underrated, and they have sneaky amounts of depth. I mentioned in my video that I thought McAvoy and Grzelcyk might be one of the top D pairs in the league right now. Carlo and Riley have really worked well off of each other, and you can do any kind of mix of your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th defenseman with the kind of depth that the Bruins have currently. But the Bruins aren't the only D-core that's underrated. The Islanders' defense is just as underrated, if not more. Because of the way the schedule will work this year, we played the Islanders a lot more than we usually would, so you probably know most of the names at this point. And I'm also assuming that a majority of you who watch these videos and subscribe to my channel are pretty hardcore hockey fans such as myself. But I don't think it's the craziest thing to say that not even the most hardcore hockey fan could tell me who Scott Mayfeild is. Maybe they couldn't even tell me who Adam Pelech is, and that just so happens to be 2 of the Islanders' top 4 defensemen. And I'm here to tell you that just because you don't have their jersey, and maybe they're not a household name, that doesn't mean they can't play. And you see that quite a bit from non-Islanders fans. So I'm here to tell the Bruins fans who haven't been paying attention and see some of these guys and think, oh man, we're going to kill this team. Look at this defense. We don't even know who they are. They stand no chance. Yeah, it does look like that on paper, but then these guys play big minutes, and all of a sudden they shut down your team, and you can't even score a goal on these guys. Now, the Islanders certainly do have some household names. They have a stud in Ryan Pulock, who's super underrated, might be one of the top 10 defensemen in the entire league, but really never gets talked about. Big minute guy, he can help out at both ends of the ice. They also have Nick Leddy, who still does his thing, another two-way defenseman. They have a younger guy in Noah Dobson, very similar playing style. And they have a 153-year-old Andy Green, who's still chugging along doing his thing there on the third D pair. So they do have some household names, but I'm here to tell Bruins fans, if you haven't noticed, the Islanders D-core is right up there with some of the best D-cores in the entire league. And even though they're not the biggest names, and maybe you haven't heard of all of them, that doesn't mean that they can't play, because they certainly can, and that will be a huge factor. They have to play their best style of hockey if they're going to shut down the lethal Bruins top 6. Someone else who will have to worry about shutting down the lethal top 6 of the Boston Bruins, and the Bruins as a whole, is Islanders coach Barry Trotz. Every year it seems like the Islanders just aren't up there with some of the top teams in the NHL, and then bam, there they are making some noise in the playoffs, contending for a cup. And that's largely due to the system of Barry Trotz. It won him a cup with the Washington Capitals, and he plays the same exact system here with the Islanders. It's all about buying in. You can play on the top line at some nights, play on the fourth line at some other nights. It doesn't matter who your goalie is, doesn't matter who your defensemen are. You play the same system and buy in, and you'll be rewarded. And the Islanders certainly do. So many of them fit perfectly under a Trotz system, and they love playing for their coach. And this is the kind of team that grinds you down over time. It seems like you're starting to beat them, and then bam, they come back and surprise you with a win, and you come out of that game saying, how did we lose? That's the kind of game that the Islanders play, and it works just enough. It's that bend, don't break mentality, and it's very structured and very defensive focus. So there's definitely going to be some frustrating times in this series, and coaching is going to be a big factor, but I will mention that there's not many times that Barry Trotz strays away from his system, and sometimes that can hurt you. We know that Bruce Cassidy's not afraid to change things up, so if he finds something that's not working, he'll switch it up, and if he finds a way to beat Trotz's system, it's likely going to work game after game, because Trotz is pretty stubborn with the system that he's had plenty of success with in the past. So it's definitely going to help the Islanders if they win, but it might also hurt the Islanders if they end up losing. And the final factor in this series, I believe, will be home ice. Now, the Bruins do happen to have home ice advantage, so if it goes to 7, that will be in TD Garden, but I do think this will help both teams. It's surprising when you look at the records how good the Bruins are when they're at home and how good the Islanders are when they're at home. And both stadiums will be rocking. TD Garden is going to be pretty close to 100%. I can't wait to hear that. You know that the players are getting so much more from these crowds. You always get that a lot in playoff time, but since it's been so quiet and even with the limited capacity of fans, it is going to be rocking. And even the other night, Islanders fans, I must say, they were bringing the noise. So I think both teams will get quite a bit of energy from their fans, and it's all about the matchups. I said before that coaching will be a factor in this series, so both sides will definitely use that final change to their advantage. And there's been a ton of one-goal games between the Bruins and the Islanders this year, so I do think it's going to be a chess match. And it might come down to when I can put the Bergeron line out there against this D pair, or when they can put out the Barzal line against this line on the Bruins. I do think it's genuinely going to come down to those little moves. So I do think home ice will be a lot more of a factor than it might be in some other series. For my prediction on this series, it was really tough for me. I wanted to go with Bruins in 5, but I feel like the Islanders will find a way to win a couple of games, so I'm going to once again go with Bruins in 6. I do realize this is going to be a frustrating series. Wouldn't be surprised if the Islanders grind it out and bring it to 7. I do feel comfortable with the Bruins winning this series, however. I was a lot more afraid of playing the Washington Capitals, and we handled them with ease, so I do think the Bruins' overall talent and depth will be able to take care of the New York Islanders. Let me know your thoughts on this series. Who do you think is going to win? What do you think of the matchup? Down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and you're pumped for round 2, make sure to give it a big like. And if you haven't already, subscribe.